Hello, my beautiful hammerhead, and welcome back to another video. So, this is it. First of all, thank you so much for supporting our tiny lore-focused community for this opportunity we have here. This is hopefully the first of many interviews with the Black Library author, and I don't have the words to show you my gratitude for this. As you know, and you can see in the background, I love the Black Library and the stories we have with it, and the development and how it evolved over the years. So, as this is the first interview we have here on the channel, nothing bad happened.
I know he's been involved with it a lot.
Everything went fine. Of course, it was totally professional.
I have to say, Black Library's crew is awesome. The editors there, the staff there,
No, this is pre-editing of the footage I recorded, because this is also going to be my first listen to it, basically, because in the interview you will see my eyes wander here and there constantly, because my PC done goofed up a couple of times. I think, I'm not that sure what happened, but my headset cut out a couple of times, so I heard nothing. I did not want to stop the flow of the interview. And yeah, just as an explanation. So I hope you will enjoy this as much as I did. Again, thank you so much for this. I love you, and we will see us at the end again. Before I get started with the community questions, first of all, these are the 17 entries, or not all 17, that you have written. I read a couple of those, and I must say I'm really surprised by how different you write, because Everqueen was the first one I've read, which is different to any Age of Sigmar story, because as the Skaven try to assassinate Alariel, the Everqueen, with a nuke, which is not the subtlest assassination attempt, I was in the mindset of, okay, I want to keep reading what Mr. Van Nguyen writes. But before we jump straight into this, also for the communities, this is the first interview I've ever given, so please be patient with me stumbling. But before we also dive into this, please talk a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Noah Van Nguyen. I am from the United States. I was born in Texas, but I grew up in South Carolina. Those are both in the South, for those who don't know American geography. And after I got out of school, I joined the military for a little bit. After that, I went to university, and then after that, I traveled overseas a little bit. And while I was traveling, I decided to start writing again, which I think probably a lot of us fans have done. When we, if you love Warhammer settings, you just write in them. I think a lot of fans do that, and so I picked it back up as an adult. I ended up getting an excellent agent, Evan Gregory, and he introduced me to Black Library, and from there it was just really pitching and then working with editors, getting stories approved, and that's how it all started.
No. Okay, so you already took apart one of the questions. Do you live the hobby of tabletop gaming? So, as you were introduced to Age of Sigmar, was there a point in where you said, okay, I have to look at this, I want to see what this is all about?
When I was in middle school, I started playing Warhammer 40,000. Back then, it was still Warhammer Fantasy Battles. They hadn't discontinued that yet. They hadn't started Age of Sigmar. And so the short answer is I did. I used to buy miniatures all the time. I used to paint them, convert them a decent amount. I actually played less than I less than I did the hobby, right? Less than I painted, less than I assembled, less than I bought. I collected a lot, but really didn't play all that much. I think my favorite interactions with the setting were just collecting
No.
and reading and writing. And now for Age of Sigmar, I actually was introduced to Age of Sigmar when I started writing stories, and so it was up until that point. I think like a lot of old Warhammer fans, I thought Age of Sigmar, what is that? That's not important. And then the yeah, and the more I learned about it, the
Sorry.
more right. The more I learned about it, the more I thought this is actually awesome. I mean, it's since taking the place of 40K in fantasy for me. I just think it's the coolest thing ever. It's the coolest setting ever.
No, I totally agree on that point. So also we're gonna alternate a little bit with serious questions and more fun questions. The next one was there is a running gag with the podcast of the painting phase where they ask their guests what is the favorite cheese. I didn't want to go the cheese route. For me, it's more like what is your favorite food?
Mhm. I don't even know when people ask me this question, I don't even know anymore. But I think if I were to judge my favorite food by what I eat most often, then I'd say probably Vietnamese food. My wife's Vietnamese, I'm half Vietnamese. So we end up eating a decent amount of Vietnamese food.
Hmm. Okay. Um, then, what is it that draws you to Age of Sigmar especially? Because you already said that it
Mhm.
is now the more important part of the Games Workshop Warhammer sphere. But what
Mhm.
is it exactly?
In a word, in one word, I would say Age of Sigmar is a very unique setting in the best
No,
of ways. It really blends a lot. It blends a lot. It blends a lot of influences from a lot of different places. Um, in some ways, I think 40K is always an obvious comparison. I think a lot of people know 40K, and I think Age of Sigmar really did with fantasy what I think 40K did really successfully with science fiction.
hmm,
Well, fantasy, science fiction. It's a blend, really, but that's the short answer. And then the longer answer is with all of that uniqueness is there's so much strangeness in the Age of Sigmar that when I'm interacting with it as a writer, I obviously there's a lore, a universe you need to fall into, but within that universe, there's really so much you can do that you can't do with other fantasy settings.
no. Okay, thanks you. Thanks you. Yeah,
Mm.
thank you. So, are you aware of the running gag? If there are not enough skulls, it is not Warhammer.
No, I've not heard that before, but that's absolutely true.
There was an interview by Arbiter Ian and his friend. They interviewed Anna Stevens, who wrote Gothgul Hollow for the Warhammer Horror series, and she
Mhm.
was made aware of by her editor. Can you add more skulls to it? And
Yeah.
it kind of keeps uh, getting bigger and bigger as more and more people are getting aware of it. So maybe it would have been a thing. Okay, what is your favorite faction? That's probably one more for the hobbyists.
Mm-hmm. I have gone back and forth a couple times here with Age of Sigmar because again, when I came into it, I started from what I had known about the old world, and so I came into it loving the Skaven because
Oh
I
yeah.
always thought the Skaven were awesome. Yeah, and then also Everqueen, that story really reinforced that for me.
Mm.
And you know who I didn't like so much is I did not like the Stormcast. I just thought they were too.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, I did. This is another example of me not really knowing enough about it though, because as time passed, as I was doing more reading, more research, and just looking at the miniatures, Stormcast are now my favorite, definitely. And a lot of
Mm.
that's just because as a writer, there's a lot of opportunities to well, for character development, for drama. There's just so many opportunities with the Stormcast, and they're so interesting. Um,
No.
in a way, it's just fantastic.
Oh, I love that answer with the
Yeah.
Stormcast. I did not expect that.
What did you
Okay.
think?
Okay. Are you aware of the secret fight clubs in the Games Workshop parking lot?
No.
um, there,
No.
there was a rumor whenever someone leaves that they have to fight each other in the parking
Mhm.
lot in Nottingham. And it started
Uh,
with Duncan Rhodes leaving Games Workshop, then with Peachy, and probably
mhm, mhm.
a lot more people. But it's also one of the running gags, which we kind of have to keep spreading because it's really, really
Yeah.
fun. And also not true for everyone who starts believing this. It's not true. No
Well, I
one
don't
fought
know.
each other.
If there was a fight club, I mean, I think one of the rules might be don't talk about it, so that could
Exactly.
be.
Someone did the rules wrong.
Mhm.
um, okay, is there a definition of too much, too big, or too many in the universe of Age of Sigmar?
Ah, that's a great question. That's a really interesting question. I personally don't think so. I don't think there is too much or too big or too many for Age of Sigmar. But I think um, if you're looking at it from kind of the lore setting,
Hmm?
the writing, the stories, you really have to ground the scale in what people can comprehend, what people would know in that setting. So I know when I write, for example, that I really try and ground people's understanding of the universe and
Hmm?
just a common man, kind of how would a normal person interpret what they hear about these things, what they know, what they've seen for themselves, what they haven't seen, but they've heard from a trusted source.
No. So this is also one of the more interesting questions because it comes from a friend of mine who just started to read Black Library fiction. And it was when he read one of the 40k stories, and it was like, but why are the numbers so small?
Mm.
And Luton09, one of the biggest law YouTubers for 40k, also made a video a couple of weeks ago about that, with a comparison of World War One with 40 million victims, and then we have a 40k story with about 60,000. And this is where the real world comparisons come into play. Is it just something that, how can I say this? It is really difficult to comprehend numbers when you don't see the people in front of you. Because I can say it was 1,000 people in front of me in line for, I don't know, the next Leviathan box. And it's something different when you say it was just 10 people in front of the line. Is it the
Mhm.
scale? What do you think about this one?
I think it's funny. I've had this conversation before with other authors and with editors, and I've also seen it discussed a lot on Reddit. I'm on Reddit fairly frequently looking at the lore sections, and I think that, well, for one thing, there's a common complaint that I think that the scale's too small. That's the common complaint that you said, and I
Hmm.
I think sometimes I think no, it doesn't really, it might not be too small. It just might be our problem with imagining how wars, speaking of 40K, would work. So,
No.
for example, all we know is the Earth, and that's what we've been fighting over for however many thousands of years. But for 40K again, if you expand that sense of we're fighting over everything to the galaxy, then it
Hmm.
suddenly, for me, it's always made more sense that a few thousand people can decide the fate of a planet, because it was also the case in, I guess, in early wars in America. America's obviously important now, but 300 years ago, the fate of the continent was being decided by battles between 2,000 people,
No.
um, which is minuscule. So I've always applied that to 40K. That's how I think about 40K. When I think about Age of Sigmar, I think what's cool about it is, since it is a fantasy setting, again, it has that rule applied of, it's a lot of people like to think of it as one world,
Mm.
I think it's my suspicion. But really, each realm, each of the mortal realms is kind of its own. It's much bigger than just a world, a planet, and you can really uh, use, if you're talking about the fate of a realm, you can talk in huge with huge scale. You can say millions of people are fighting each other across the realm. But again, if you shrink it down to a single area in the realm, if there's armies doing battle, I could imagine,
Mm.
20,000, an army of 20,000 could decide the fate of the Great Parch at a certain time, at a certain place, under
No.
certain circumstances. So I guess my short answer is I'm pretty flexible with what I need to suspend my belief or disbelief.
Mm.
Uh, I'm flexible. I will make the numbers work in my head a lot of the time. I'll rationalize them, justify them, and I think in Age of Sigmar, there's room for the same kind of scale, or
Mm.
even a bigger scale than you see in 40K.
No. Okay. Then other novels, not Warhammer. What is your favorite?
Mhm.
What are your favorite ones, and where do you get your inspiration from?
I am fortunate to say, I'm fortunate in that everything I read, I tend to take something away from. Uh, the novels that really inspire me are the ones that feel like a gut punch when you finish them. It just feels
Oh
there's
yeah.
some moment, maybe yeah, where it can kind of hurt. It can make you put the book down and just stop, just kind of think about the book for a while. And
Mm.
the last book that did that for me, there's been a lot of books that have done that for me. But the last book that's really, really done that for me was probably The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen. He has the same last name as
Mm.
me, and again, it was just a powerful, powerful book.
Okay.
And then me being half Vietnamese and the book being about a Vietnamese experience in America also probably
Oh.
uh,
Okay.
probably influenced that.
No. Yeah. Understandable.
Mhm.
um. Okay. Oh, do you have anything else before I go to the next question?
I do. If we're talking Warhammer, by the way, if we're talking Black Library
Yeah.
books,
Of course. Every novel you want to talk about.
yeah. Um, I don't want to name names, but there's really a lot of stuff in Black Library that I really enjoy. And what I've been having a role with most recently is so if we're talking about the imprints, I love the Warhammer crime stuff.
No.
Um, I love Chris Wright's stuff, and Warhammer crime is awesome. Obviously, um, I've been reading a lot of not a lot. I've been reading some of Mike Brooks stuff as well,
Mm.
which has been fun. It's been good fun. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay. Okay. So this is one of the questions, also again from my community, and I love this one because is there a lore master in Games Workshop in the form of an expose for the authors, similar to Perry Roden? So something like a timeline,
Hmm.
or this person at this point is here, does this, this is the motivation, this is the character. Is there something? And if yes, who is in charge of this? Because for my understanding, for Age of Sigmar right now, it is Phil Kelly.
Hmm. I I've also heard of Phil Kelly's close involvement with Age of Sigmar. I don't know that I've heard that he's in charge of it or anything. I know he's been involved with it a lot.
Hmm.
As far as a lore master, I don't. I to be honest, I just don't know. Because I'm the authors for Black Library most of the time are just freelancers, so our relationship with Games Workshop is it's not like a formal employee-employer relationship. What I can say is we get I know I get very clear guidance on uh, kind of what the universe is and what the universe isn't. I've definitely been guilty of having some ideas that are out there,
No.
and then, and, the publisher will come back and say that's not how this works, and this is why. So there's definitely a very good
Mm.
understanding of the IP, which makes sense. It's Games Workshop's IP. Of course, they would understand it.
No.
As far as the lore master, I'm not sure if there's a lore master.
Mm. Okay, thank you. Was there a moment in one of your novels when you write and think, nope, that's too much?
Yeah, yeah. There are often these moments where there's been entire sections I've cut out of stories. One, I was thinking about this the other day. But have you seen the paint jobs that people do for Stormcast, where they make them look like sculptures? They make them look like
Oh,
sculptures of stone.
no, not yet.
So I love this painting style, but they basically paint the Stormcast as if they're statues, and they call them, what I've heard them called
Ah, the
is
marble cast.
Stonecast.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so I've heard them called the Stonecast, and I
no.
was uh, trying to find a way to work that at one point into a story, and it just I didn't have the time, I didn't have the patience. I was skeptical that it would make it through the crucible of revision anyway, so I ended
Mm,
up not trying to tackle that.
no. Okay. um. Okay. In a book series, maybe somewhere in the future, or for your single novels, how do you build your concepts?
Usually, usually I start from something,
Hmm?
and a lot of the time, when I think when you're working with a publisher, and especially a publisher like Black Library, you'll get an understanding when you start discussing the project of what like kind of what needs what the novel was envisioned as, right? So
Mm.
for God Eater Son, for example, I was given some direction. I was asked, do you want to write a Slaves to Darkness novel? And then there was some more direction on top of that of kind of some possible things to include. And what I do is I take that when I'm building the pitch, and I'll take certain ideas from my life. They say write what you know.
No.
This is kind of how that I see that through. I'll take something from my life that I can incorporate into the novel and start growing it, kind of growing the idea. And then over time, with feedback and review, you just kind of slowly refine that into something that works. So for God Eater Son, for example, I had some clear experiences from my life that I wanted to incorporate into the novel, and
Mm.
I used that to kind of build the setting, build the character, and his struggle. And what you find, what I think when this is done really well, I think all authors do it in some form or another. I think what you get is a story that is really where every element of the story is kind of an intersection of the other elements, where you get something that really um, that's really holistic, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, and then practically, as far as how I do that practically, I take a lot of notes. I like to use computer paper, and I'll fold the pages in half. I think George Carey Oates had to do that, and I'll just write in halves and then review those. Take notes, take notes, take
No.
notes.
Okay, then you already took one of my further questions a little bit apart, but if you could roundhouse kick one of the gods, who and why?
Uh, it'd be one of the elf gods.
Oh,
Yeah, I
is
feel
it
like they get
Teclis?
it. Either I'm thinking Teclis or Lariel. Uh, I think a lot of way, like I see where Nagash is coming from a lot of the time. I think Nagash is Nagash, right? And you gotta
Yeah.
you gotta recognize who he is and that he can be troublesome. And same with like Gorka Morka, for example. There's a lot of gods that are like, you gotta you got to recognize who they are.
Hmm.
But then the elf guys could be, except for maybe like Malarian, like but Tekla, Ilarial. I look at them or read something about them, and I'll often think you could be a little bit more helpful.
Okay, I love this. Okay, this is the question where you already took a little bit from it. What is the
Mhm.
process for the Black Library? Are you pitching a story and some ideas, or do they give you a couple of topics and you have to choose?
There's often a pitch process. I believe this is the same with most IP publishers. There's a pitch process where I always get awesome feedback from the editors. I don't think any no really none of my stories would be as good as they are without feedback from the editors during the pitch process.
Hmm.
So there's that, and then sometimes the pitch process happens within the frame again of some direction that you're getting something that they would like to see in the story, um, just to make sure that kind of the outcome aligns with the goals and the needs uh, of the setting, the needs of the publisher. And then yeah, as far as the pitch process, I mean, you write a pitch. It's usually short. Um, maybe if you're familiar with book querying, it's pretty much kind of like a query,
Oh,
maybe a
me
little longer.
personally, no.
So a query is authors will write pitches to literary agents who will decide if they want to represent an author or not. And so a query is very similar to a pitch, in my opinion, where
Hmm.
you really want to communicate. You want to communicate the story in really a few paragraphs that you're pitching,
No.
and then everything grows out of that, and it can look differently. It can look differently for different projects, or if you're working with different people. But you'll basically get feedback from that, and you'll slowly grow that pitch into something longer, kind of a synopsis, and then
Hmm.
you'll continue. Really, I would say the whole project grows out of the pitch. The novel grows out of everything you start during that process.
No. Okay. And the last two questions, which might be connected to each other. Which character are you itching to write? And could it be someone from the old world? So I didn't know if I could conjoin these two questions. I just leave it up for you.
I guess uh, if this counts, because he's also in the mortal realms, but I'd love to write a story about Archaon. Uh,
Ah.
yeah, and then I'd love to also come back to Andrasta. I
Hmm.
quite enjoy writing Andrasta. But yeah, Archaon, I think would be an interesting. Uh, it'd be interesting to tackle him.
Okay. Just quickly for your two Age of Sigmar novels. First of all, God Eater's Son was very tense for me. I was not only really captivated, as I've said it in my review, but also this is the second story in the Age of Sigmar verse where, uh, sorry for the spoiler, dear audience, but where Archaon has his second son. You don't have to answer that in any way, shape, or form. But is there something in the future making of a third son or maybe the first daughter or anything like that? What is the family plan for Archaon?
I can't comment there, not because it's not a secret or anything. I just don't know. I don't.
Okay.
Archaon's not. I can't come to. I could try. I guess I could go up to Black Library and say, "Here's my plan for Archaon."
This is the
But
family tree.
yeah, he's gonna have a son and a nephew. And, no, I just don't know.
Okay.
Is the short answer. I don't
Yeah, and the last thing for Indrasta is um, I really enjoyed that Indrasta is basically not changing her personality all over the novel and only recognizes certain things about herself. in some people might say she's the big baddie in that one, which I really enjoy, as she's a single-minded being. And for me, the best part in this book was Nida, which was really surprising, as I really enjoy Indrasta as a character. The thing for me also is all your different uses of words for family in different cultures. I believe it was Suku that came from Finland, I think, or one of the northern countries, and there are probably a lot more words hidden in there. What was your motivation for that?
Yeah, I think. But by the way, I think Suko, yeah, it means family, and I think Northern Sami. I'm not a Northern Sami expert. I did as much
Hmm.
research as I could, but my motivation was really, I guess there were a few things in there. I mean, I wanted to create a culture that had a good combination of the familiar and strange. In this case, I think I wanted more familiar than I wanted
Hmm.
strange, right? Because the Suku take a lot. They are basically the Sami in the mortal realms in some ways, and yeah, it was the idea. I forget where the idea had grown out of initially. The idea to initially use that the Sami as inspiration, but what I thought was really appropriate when I started working on it was the idea of creating a culture that exists outside of Sigmar's rule. That's not they're not anti-Sigmar. Basically, the opposite of the Erdun and
No.
God Eater Son. Um, but then you could also match them up with the Icelanders. That is a culture that was under Sigmar's protection in a way
Hmm.
that really paralleled the medieval interactions of the Sami and the Norse, which was a really interesting, again, just an interesting idea to take that history and try and put it in the mortal realms in a nuanced way. And so, yeah, I guess the real answer is it was I forget where the idea initially came from, but it was just it felt interesting, it felt right, and so I built on it as I could.
No. Okay, thank you for that. Just one quick question: is a yes or no answer. Can we expect something in the near future from you again? Not a short story, because we had a God of Steel Soul and something for Untamed Realms, which I also still have to read, but again, big novel from you.
I think so. I don't know how soon, but there is
Oh,
something in the
okay,
works.
nice. If you have anything else, now is your time. You can shout out someone if you want, because Google Meets is gonna kick us out in 1.5 or 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah. Well, first, I just want to say thank you, Bjorn, and thank your viewers and your community for hosting me. This has been
No,
a lot of
thank
fun.
you.
I also want to say thank you to the Mortal Realms podcast. They are a really great fandom
Hmm.
for the Age of Sigmar setting, and probably the AOS lore subreddit on Reddit. Also a great community. I love watching. I love reading
No,
through the stuff they post. And then I also have to say, Black Library's crew is awesome. The editors there, the staff there, they're
no. So we were interrupted.
Mhm.
Then please, again.
Sure. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Mortal Realms podcast. They're awesome fans. The AOS lore subreddit on Reddit, also awesome fans, also awesome community of fans. And then, if they hear this, the staff at Black Library, the editors, the line editors, they're all really the whole staff. It's a team, and they work really hard to get Warhammer fiction out. It's, it deserves a shout out. And definitely the other authors do. And I think a lot of us are we are in a we communicate in separate channels, and it's a very helpful community to be a part of.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I just wanted to thank you, Bjorn. Thank your community for hosting me.
Yeah, thank
And
you for being a guest.
yeah, my pleasure. This is awesome.
Um, okay, now I kind of lost track because of the incident. Then again, I really do appreciate it for you to come be a guest here. Um, we are looking forward for more publications from you because maybe you're aware of this is mainly a lore channel, and we all love the Age of Sigmar lore. As you already said, it's really unique. It gives us things that we don't have in other publications, and especially with all of your colleagues in the Black Library. Like you said, Mike Brooks, who writes more of the comedic stories for Orcs and 40k, as an example, Chris Wraith, and what I like to say, his Rativerse with the Inquisition and the Custody stories were just fantastic. And also Varen Gantua in the Warhammer Crimes, which I admit have to keep reading because I'm only at book 1. But also, I don't know, all your work is... I don't know, I don't have the words for it. I'm sorry. I'm just happy.
I'm honored. Yeah, thank you.
So that was it. Thank you again so much for this opportunity. Again, I don't have the words for it. And yeah, if you want another Black Library author on the channel, please leave a suggestion and the question, if possible, in the comment section down below, because I will see what we can do. And again, hopefully this will be a series which we can do together in the future. Then please leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section down below. I am keen to know what you have to say. And while you're down there, please remember to do all the YouTube stuff, because hitting buttons is not only fun. Why? Because that way we can build a bigger community and talk more Warhammer almost every day. And by that, I of course mean like and subscribe, and if you want, you can support me on Ko-fi. But until then, have a great day, my friend. Stay fantastic, stay hydrated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, bye, bye.